Hello.
Welcome back.
It's recap time.
Yay, my favorite part of the show.
This is an interesting one to do a recap for because
the recap will be just as long as the arc.
Pretty much, right? There's not a hell of a lot that happens.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what is there to discuss about Himatsubushi. It's just weird. It's just weird top to bottom.
Sure, I got you. See, so the deal with Arc 4 is that Ryukishi was like, man, I'm going to do this thing where I split the story in half and I have the question arcs and I have the answer arcs, which is cool, you know. And he decided that he didn't have enough time to do Arc 5, Higurashi Justice, so he wanted to just throw something in the middle. And I feel like it carries that feeling. Like, it does feel like it's something he's like, we could do it. To me, like, in the role-playing scenario, it feels like a one-shot more than a mainline, like, campaign episode, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Because we get a whole bunch of new characters. Oishi basically steals the show at every scene, which is amazing. I love him. It's basically the Oishi arc. Akasaka may be the main, like, protagonist. Oishi steals my heart in this arc because he's just always there for you, and we love him. Not to mention the cloning plant and all that.
Yes.
A lot of the bullshit. My favorite bit.
I do love all the comments that are like, oh man, it's so strange that Ueshi's like every police officer in Hinabazara, and I'm just like, well, just you wait.
It makes so much sense. We'll get to that, yeah. Well, that's the fun thing with this being the end of the question arcs, is that we should theoretically start to get some answers coming in. Although we do get a lot of like extra information in this chapter.
Yeah.
I feel like tying Oishi to the construction manager's death, and like, here's Rika talking weird, you know, like shining a little bit of spotlight on her and like what the hell's going on there. It really, this arc really does seem to be kind of cleaning up the town, cleaning up the readers' minds, priming them for the answer arcs. I feel like if we had just gone straight from Tatari Higurashi straight to Miyakashi, there might have been a bit of a disjointed feeling. This is very much, I think, in my mind, this reminds me of a trope in a lot of key novels, what's called a bridge arc.
Yeah.
So a bridge arc is, I don't know a lot of examples. The one that comes to mind is Air. I love the bridge arc in Air, by the way. But essentially, once you've done all the character arcs and you can kind of go through them, so we've done the Rena arc, and we've done the Mion arc, and we've done the Sadako arc, and Rika wasn't romanceable for whatever reason. And now we have unlocked the final chapter, but you got to do one more arc that's going to set you up for it. And it's a totally different setting, totally different characters, but it's explaining what happened in the past. Shout out to Air. Not that I ever finished Air, mind you. I did not actually. I read the bridge arc and I loved it, and then I started reading the final arc and was like, this is dumb. I'm just going to not read it. Many people are not happy with me for that decision.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't know. Does that all kind of line up with how you're feeling?
I think that makes sense. I did want to say, as you mentioned, like, you know, following straight on from Tatari Higurashi.
Yeah.
There was a moment at the end of the, I think, last video where you were like, oh yeah, you know, Kuma-chan's car, and we were like pointing out the scene.
Yeah.
And you were like, I don't know if I should do this, but then I sat down to edit that night, and that was the video that I was editing, and I was like, oh, it is the one!
It is the car! Sweet baby Kuma-chan. Yeah. Yeah, it's, I definitely think that Kuma-chan's, like, you know, that car going missing is definitely one of the least kind of foreshadowed mysteries, but this, like, lines it up very nicely.
Yeah, I mean, it also doesn't feel super significant.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, not to speak ill of my boy Kuma.
Kuma-chan,
very
best boy,
significant character.
best girl. Yeah.
I don't know. Like, I think the way that I would describe Himatsubushi is kind of similar to Umaneko's Arc 4.
Really? Now that's interesting. We'll get to that.
No. Specifically in the fact that it is the arc that had the most potential but the worst execution.
Well, except for the ending, but you know, that's.
I mean, as entertaining as the ending is, it's still pretty stilted, I felt.
I was referring to Umaneko, but anyway, we'll talk about that in the Umaneko section, I think, because I definitely do want to say some stuff about that. But yeah, no, for sure, like, the change in premise, the fact that there, like, is hardly any slice of life or horror. Like, in my mind, when I think of Higurashi, those are the two kind of pillars of genre that kind of stick out. Like, the mystery is important, and we're approaching it as a mystery novel, but When I told people back in the good old days when I was a small boy and I loved Higurashi, I was like, these are the things of Higurashi that do not work. This is why, I've had a mental blank. It's not Ray. It's the other one, the season 4, whatever. Kage or whatever it is. That's not Kage. That's a track. Anyway, point is, Arc 4 doesn't work because there is all the slice of life and no horror. And I was like, that's an imbalance. Doesn't work. Not a fan. Same sort of jam here where there's like hardly any slice of life. And there's also just no horror. There's some creepy moments, particularly with Rika, which is fun. But I don't really feel like it lines up with the other chapters.
Well, yeah, I think that the thing that this arc did the most strongly was the intrigue, right?
Sure. Yeah.
The sense of intrigue that it created by just shifting the premise to a completely different ballpark,
a war zone, right?
was fantastic.
Yeah,
I think that the story definitely earned it. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a bit of tonal whiplash, as you mentioned, with it like being no slice of life, no real horror.
There's also
stuff.
a fight scene, which is interesting. Yeah,
yeah, like it had a massive tonal shift, and I think that in terms of what it was trying to achieve, and in broad strokes, the way that it executed, it was brilliant.
It's a good time.
It raises a lot of questions, it answers a lot of others, but leads to more questions on those.
Yeah, sure.
So it's definitely, as I said, probably the strongest potential of the arcs we've read so far.
Yeah.
Also, interestingly enough, I'd say it's probably the first one we've read that couldn't be a standalone story.
Yeah. Well, it relies on your context of future events, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Or past events, depending on how you look at it. Yeah. It's still a good time, and I like that Higurashi is writing something different. Like, as I mentioned during Tatari Hiroshi, he had that problem. It was like, how do I write the third movie? What do I do with that? And then he's like, how do I just keep going? How do I write 8 of these? And I don't think that that's a problem that he has in Umineko or any of his other works. Higginbana might have some slight issues there, but that's a completely different beast. I do think that it's good to see him try to write different stuff, try to write fight scenes, try to write that very focused intrigue without quite as much craziness.
Yeah, I think you could kind of approach it on a similar level to Umineko Arc 3.
Sure.
On the grounds that, not to say nothing of the actual story of Umineko Arc 3, because it was like massively changed based on the audience feedback to Arc 2, I think that there was definitely a bit of a lack of preparation that went into Arc 3 that in some ways kind of weakens that arc in my mind.
Sure.
And again, like, I still love Umineko Arc 3. I still really love this. But I think that it's a similar flaw that you're seeing in Ryukishi's writing, just at a different stage in his writing evolution.
Yeah. Something else that I kind of wanted to bring up, obviously we've been talking about Rockmore's translation of the production diaries, which, shout out to Rockmore, keep doing what you're doing, it's great, because we have more stuff to talk about. But a lot of the stuff that has been happening in the production diaries, writing about how, Ryukishi was working full time while also trying to do all of this. And also in his recent, at time of recording, his recent announcements about Kikonia and Saku, about how like he's got a director, doing Kikonia, not like the whole thing for him. The name is Nakao Boshi, I believe. And that's just because Ryukishi, he's getting old and he can't survive on 4 hours of sleep every night anymore. And I think that like, as he's trying to, as I said, work on Arc 5 and also producing Arc 4, like, he's trying to do a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that shows. That said, most people, when we get to Arc 5, most people think that Arc 5 is kind of the pinnacle of his writing, so clearly it pays off, in some people's opinion at least. But yeah, I wonder if he might have stretched himself a little bit thin.
Maybe. I think it also possibly could be like, I know at least when I'm coming up with stories, I'll tend to like come up with too many things and cutting it down is really difficult.
Yep.
So
he's tried to take, like, he's trimmed the fat, then he said like, well, my pork isn't going to be ready until like next week, so I'm going to take that fat and make a story out of it.
Yeah, exactly, right? This arc was his opportunity to trim fat from 5, I think is probably what led to why 5 is so strong, admittedly not having read it.
Of course. Yeah, that's just the general impression that people have. Personally, I'm more of an Arc 6 kind of guy, but I'm biased. I'm always biased.
Yeah.
For reasons.
I think the other thing that was very interesting, as we pointed out as we were going through, was the fight scenes in Himatsubushi.
Yep. His first time.
Ugh.
Look, it's his first time. It's okay. Yeah, I mean, we mentioned at the time, but the problem is that the victory doesn't really feel super earned.
Yeah.
Like, it says, Oishi's getting beaten up. Oh, here he is. And, like, Akasaka's, like, running through the woods.
Yeah.
He's still running through the woods. Okay, good. Like, compared to Keiichi's in Arc 3, where he goes over it, he has his 1500 seconds thing, and the catharsis of his, like, whole plan crumbling into little pieces is just beautiful. It's poetry.
Yeah, definitely.
Whereas this is just some guys running through the woods.
Yeah, I mean, on the one hand, Oishi just kind of showing up Deus Ex Machina to save him. Like, it's not surprising enough that you feel super cheated by it, and it also does
it's happened. Yeah.
Yeah, it also does raise the question of, like, maybe Oishi was working with the villagers.
It's possible.
So it's not all awful. I think the other main problem I had with those sequences was, like, the way that Ryukishi described the fights, as I mentioned as we were going through, was, like, very clearly visual. Like, you could very distinctly tell what motions Ryukishi was trying to describe. But at the same time, that's just, like, not a fight sequence that particularly made a lot of sense.
Sure, yeah.
Which, isn't a super big problem unless you happen to coach combat sports and think about that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine.
So, like, yeah, it's not a huge issue, but it's definitely something that you can clearly see he's grown out of the further we get into, especially things like Umineko. OMG, there are fights in Umineko, # spoilers.
How dare you?
They're a lot stronger.
Yeah, sure. I don't even know if we need an Umineko section at this point. I don't even know what to get into there. You've already said half of it.
I mean,
you monster.
The thing is like, a lot of the stuff I can say about Umineko in relation to this arc is very, very broad.
For sure.
And considering that the main point I want to make about this arc is how clearly it shows he's improved, there's not really much other way to say it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, fair enough. No, I think it's fairly straightforward for you to say that. I think it's pretty accurate. I don't know, because you mentioned that, like, the intrigue's pretty good, like learning about, what Akasaka learns in the town. Like I enjoyed meeting the informant. I think one of my favorite scenes, without Oishi in it, obviously, all of Oishi's scenes are best scenes. But one of the scenes that kind of stood out to me was the discussion in the, like, the meeting of the families.
Yeah.
That was really cool, getting to see these characters outside of the regular context and seeing what they used to be like, and maybe, testing whether or not that's true now. Because obviously Oishi himself is very different. We don't have much of a frame of mind or a point of view for Akasaka, obviously, because he is introduced in this chapter. But yeah, I don't know. Do you feel like your perspective on any of the characters has kind of shifted, like, at all?
I've started taking the things I was already thinking about Rika more seriously. I think that's probably the biggest change.
I mean, Rika is definitely, like, she's the spotlight character, right? Oishi meme aside, like, it goes Rena, Mion, Sadako, that's her name. I don't like for a second there.
It was great seeing your finger twiddling as you were, like, trying to count them off on your hand there.
Hold on, who is it? Who's the other main girl in this story? But yeah, like, the first 4 arcs correspond pretty strongly to the main 4 girls.
Yeah. I do, like, I think that structure was kind of predictable in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But I'm not let down by that in any way.
Yeah.
It's obviously coming off the back of things like Key Novels.
Shout out.
With their arc-based nonsense. So
at least this isn't proper arcs. Thank goodness. That said, the PS3, I've gotten some glimpses because there was someone who was, like, really bummed out. Shout out to Large Hadron Collider.
Yeah.
She was really bummed out about how Higurashi hasn't been released yet. Time of recording probably won't be a time of release, but anyway.
Don't you dare.
She liked the PS3 art, and so she was like, but I don't know Japanese. And someone said, well, there's a version that you could emulate on your PC, and you could, like, put the old translation with the old art down in, like, corner of the screen. You could stream that and that sort of thing. So that's what she's been doing. But the PS3 version has decisions to be made.
Right.
And you end up on, like, the Rena path or the Mion path. And I haven't, like, looked into it entirely myself. The main thing that I always talk about, and I probably talked about in the playthrough multiple times by now, is that if you pick all of the wrong choices, if you very deliberately avoid any of the arcs where, like, bad stuff happens, then you end up on a completely different arc that just focuses on Mion just on her own after everything has gone down, which is really cool. But yeah, so if you want to, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to read Higurashi like a key novel, you can. That does exist. You just have to get a PS3 or Japanese PS3 or emulate it or whatever. Go sort that out yourselves. I have no
what
interest
you're
in
telling me is that at some point we're going to have to go dig up that arc and...
Maybe. We probably will. Because it looks pretty interesting. And there are definitely some, like there's a number of manga-only arcs. Yeah. There's all sorts of crap that's really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of Higurashi arcs, like just beyond the original Abe. We'll talk about that a bit more when we finish.
Yeah, I think the other thing other than Rika that was kind of big in terms of character for me was...
Yeah.
Actually getting to see Ueshi's motivation.
Yeah.
I think that there wasn't really much way I can see that you could have really picked that Ueshi's connection to the story was through the Sight Foreman.
I don't know that you could have.
And I don't feel cheated by that fact either. I kind of like that it was a later reveal.
No, it's cool. I mean, Ueshi, like, he is no joke. Like, he's a big old meme. He's a taste of delicious. He's the angel of death. But he's also just a really, really well-written character.
Yeah.
He's scheming and conniving, and the way that his relationship with Keiichi and his actions like change and become more drastic from arc 1, 2, and 3, you can really see where he's come from in this arc. The arc does a really good job of highlighting this is, where he started off, and this is why he's become so desperate. Yeah, I don't know. He's just a really great character, and I love playing him.
I think the other thing I particularly liked about character in this arc was Akasaka.
Yeah.
He was a character that I would have expected going like, oh, it's Ryukishi's first set of novels, and he's introducing a character whose perspective we're viewing it from in the 4th arc.
Yeah.
This cannot go well, but it actually went pretty decently.
That was good.
I felt like we got a decent insight onto who Akasaka is. I feel like he was a character that was easy enough to relate to.
Yeah.
And not particularly like too strong in any one department. He feels like the kind of character.
He was an everyman in a sense.
Yeah. The point that I was going to make about him is he feels like the kind of character that later down the line is going to slot into the rest of the cast very tidily. And particularly with his thing, the whole thing about the end about them having written the arc and him wanting to go back and save them from their fate or whatever. Sure. I feel like in the repeating timelines thing,
that is my only wish.
Yeah.
Suppose the truth. Find the truth.
I feel like in the repeating timelines thing, he's probably going to rock up at some point in like the original, well, quote unquote, original timeline.
Maybe.
Like that's just kind of the way that I see his character going.
I do like that kind of that way that like when Akasaka fights the thug or whatever, he loses.
Yes.
He isn't just like, oh, we saved the kid, everything's great. He fails. I wish he has to save his butt. And then afterwards, he has the realization of, wait, were we like supposed to save him? Like, is that just something like, did my being here even matter at all?
Yeah, that's
like,
why
such a good moment.
Yeah, that's why I didn't feel cheated by that scene, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
is because it very much makes it feel like that was all supposed to happen that way.
Yeah,
and it sets that up very nicely and kind of explains it post-mortem very nicely without feeling too expositional.
Yeah, no, it was really good. I really enjoyed the discussion between Ueshi and Akasaka at the end there too.
Yeah, it is fascinating to me. I think people who have followed for long enough know that I kind of love the whole authorship approach to When They Cry. So for like this arc now having it be, oh, hey, would you look at this? Ueshi and Akasaka wrote Higurashi. Like, do I take that to be canon? Do I take that to be like, is this someone else writing that's writing? Is Ryukishi writing someone else writing that?
Right.
Akasaka and Ueshi did it.
Something bonkers
like how
like
many
that,
layers deep are we?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's good fun. I don't know. I mean, do you hold any stock in that? Do you think there's any foreshadowing that might lead to that sort of interpretation?
I don't think that there's a particularly strong set of foreshadowing, but it's also something that now that the story is introduced, it's probably going to become a bit more prevalent.
Maybe.
As with many themes that we've discussed time and time again, like once they've been mentioned explicitly, that's when you got to get the magnifying glass out.
I mean, there has been someone writing poems this whole time.
Exactly, right? That's kind of the whole thing. We've had that authorship introduced right from the start, but it was kind of like extraneous from the story, but now we've tied it to the story.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to move on to like theory crafting? Are you ready for that? Or you want to keep talking about character and story stuff?
I don't think I have a lot more to say. I do think that this arc was probably saved by its own brevity.
Sure.
In terms of character.
yeah, I mean, it could have been, they could have cut it short. I'm just saying that one scene with the kid. What was happening there? Why were we supposed to care? I mean, I love Jerry as much as an X-Man, but like, what happened there?
Yeah, I don't think there's much more we can say on that we didn't say at the time.
You're absolutely correct.
But if we were to go through and cut, edit, remove, change, whatever, any of these scenes, that would be the first one on the chopping block from the whole of the story thus far.
It's always joked that Higurashi needs a gosh dang editor because he doesn't seem to have one. I don't know if the problem is worse in Higurashi or Yumeneko. I think it might be worse in Yumeneko. But
I'd say it's more frequent in Yumeneko, but less egregious.
I think so too. But yeah, he definitely needs an editor because clearly he loves what he's writing and he just his pen just goes across the page and then it's like, bam, done. Ship it, stamp of approval. And then he realizes that he hasn't like there are a bunch of extra parts and the manual's in upside down and all sorts of crap. But no, it's been a really good time reading this arc. I really enjoyed it. Theory time. I don't know. What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Rika.
What do you want to say about Rika? I didn't think she's suspicious at all.
What is with this fucking supernatural bullshit
She's
about
not supernatural.
Rika?
She's just like a little girl and she talks like this sometimes. And sometimes she talks like this and she's really cute. But then she talks like this and she scares Akasaka half to death.
I'm so weirded out by that whole thing.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Because on the one hand, we've obviously had it introduced that many times through the story thus far of some supernatural, extrapolation on Rika's family and their connection to Oyashiro-sama, but this arc very much pushed it into the literal sense, and I'm not sure whether to like
take it literally, or is it like a trick, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, to my mind, it's obviously a trick of some kind. Like, perhaps when Akasaka and Oishi were writing it down, what really happened is Rika was like, hey, I know exactly what's going on. Here's this, but it's too dangerous for him to directly divulge the information, so he portrayed it through this magical persona.
Oh, maybe.
As, like, a cover for something else, especially as we've been getting into the whole conspiracy thing, and the JDF or whatever showing up at the end of Arc 3, like, maybe...
Japan, the festival? Oh, crap, what is it even?
It's JSDF.
Yeah, the JSDF. I don't know what the S stands for. But
Neither do I.
Japanese Defense Force.
But, like...
They're in that one anime about when the JSDF, they go into the fantasy world and they shoot all the dragons down with their anti-aircraft weapons. It's a big, like, advertisement for the JSDF, and they just go into like a medieval world and kill everyone. It
sounds like a great meme.
It is.
Like I
shout out to Rory Mercury.
The most obvious pick that I have for that is that Rika knew what was going on, told Akasaka, and Akasaka was like, fuck, what do I do about this? And writing it in this like weird tone was perhaps the way that he addressed that.
Maybe.
And then if they've written Higurashi and Uishi and Akasaka's conversation is in the story that they've written,
right?
Then do we take it that the conversation actually happened in 1985, or did it happen in 1979? They said it in the future, asked people to find out the truth as like their pitch to people to be like, hey, something fucking weird's going on.
Right.
So that's kind of where my head's at the moment.
So why like... I don't know, why is Rika kind of the focus of this like supernatural betrayal?
Because that's what's been set up, right? I'm saying that in the authorship theory,
sure,
that it has been written by Akasaka and Oishi, regardless of if there's a higher author between them and Ryukishi. That because there's this mystical, I guess, prophecy of like the however manyth daughter of the however manyth daughter is the reincarnation of Oyashiro-sama.
Sure.
You're trying to cover up a story with a supernatural pretense to hide it from some goddamn government organization. How much easier could you get than going, oh, of course, the magical goddaughter. Like it seems like such an obvious pick if that's the situation.
Sure.
That's the way that I'd approach it.
You think that's what's going on?
I don't put a lot of confidence in that, but that's definitely like my main line of thinking at the moment.
Sure. What's the alternative then?
I mean, the other alternative, just trying to keep it like one or the other at the moment, is definitely to take a more literal supernatural approach.
Okay.
Like there's obviously been this pertaining question through a lot of When They Cry of, is it magic? Is it people? Whatever. And I think that the story has not so far, how do I put this? It's not presented things in a real enough way for me to feel the urgency to make everything fit a real explanation.
Sure.
As much as I would like to, and as much as I'm trying to, and as much as I probably still will at the end, regardless of what the story actually ends up showing me. You could show me the vast depths of eternity, and I'd still probably explain it to you as some wacky metaphor. And like that's where I'm thinking I'll end up, but I think it's still important for me to consider the other approach. As we've mentioned in past recaps, a lot of the people I know who've read Higurashi first have approached Umineko with a much more magic friendly approach.
Sure.
And I think that that's something that is worth keeping in mind for me.
Sure.
Because of how hardline I typically go the other direction.
Fair enough. Alrighty then. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Because this is kind of, like, this is the halfway point in the story. We are going to start getting some sort of answers. I mean, I'll never confirm or deny anything, but they call the answer arcs. What am I supposed to do with that?
Exactly.
I don't know. We know that the next arc is going to star Shion. What do you think's up with that?
God, it's tough.
The more popular of the twin sisters,
obviously.
That's what we keep getting told in these damn recaps. Or class review sessions. Which was amazing, by the way. Shout out to the Elite Four. And their terrible introduction. Here's the deal. I love the Elite Four. In the anime, there's an episode that introduces them.
Yeah.
In the swimsuit episode, which is it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's not awful. It's not nearly as pervy as I think it is. And the Elite Four are fantastic. That was garbage. I don't know what happened there. I don't know what happened. It was like, it's Doc. We're coming for you. I'm like, who is it? Oh, it's the Elite Four. Oh, shit. And then it was like one line. Bring them back, Higurashi. I mean, I know he will because they're in the anime.
Either that or the anime took that one scene and extrapolated it to high hell.
It has to be more. I know they're also in the 4th season. And there is a visual version of that awful 4th season episode that shall not be discussed.
Oh, no.
But there is a visual version, and we don't want it. Anyway, back to Shion. What's Shion about?
Well, I feel like what with the answer arcs being supposedly parallels of the question arcs, like, the thing I know going into the answer arcs is that we have one answer arc per question arc, and they're not in the same order.
Okay.
So, and maybe I'm wrong, which would be very funny, but my immediate guess is that we're getting arc 2 from Shion's perspective.
Okay, sure.
But I don't necessarily think that the way the answer arcs are going to play out is going to be quite literal one-to-one just from another perspective. I think it is going to be another play out of events that parallels and explains the question arcs, even if it isn't a literal repeat different perspective of them.
Sure.
So I do kind of expect, because, you know, Shion and Mion were obviously the main ones in Wada Nagashi, that Meikashi starring Shion will be the answer arc for Wada Nagashi.
Sure.
But whether or not it is the Wada Nagashi story or whether it's something else, you know, maybe even if we like, if we go back and now that we've had this change in character perspective through Akasaka, if we actually have another flashback character perspective of Shion, like before Satoshi disappeared or something, that wouldn't feel super out of place, given that we've now established another character perspective and time through Akasaka.
Yeah, sure.
I'd maybe even say that could have been the purpose of Himatsubushi, to like throw you that briefly, get you comfortable with leaving Keiichi before dropping it on you in the answer arcs.
Sweet baby Keiichi, the best boy. I guess I did have another question for you. It's just occurred to me. We saw at the end of Arc 3 that there was a great big disaster with the gas and the volcanoes and stuff.
The great Hinamizawa disaster.
Yeah. And also in Arc 4, apparently it's happened again, but Oishi is around.
Oishi survived this time.
Do you think that disaster happens in Arc 1 and 2?
Yes. Yep. Because at the end of Arc 1, when we get Keiichi's note, there's some line about the note was largely forgotten until something else happened that brought back attention to it.
Well spotted.
Thank you.
Yep. Arc 2?
Arc 2, I'm less confident on. I feel as though it might still, like, maybe the time gap between Keiichi getting stabbed and Keiichi in the hospital is, like, when that happens.
Maybe.
And that's, like, why Uishi's traveled out because the village is quarantined. Or maybe that's, like, or maybe he's in the clinic at the end in Hinamizawa when the gas starts pouring out, and that's what the thing of Mion under the bed is at the end of Arc 2.
Maybe.
I think it's definitely less obvious at the end of Arc 2, but I do still think it happened.
All right, cool. No, that makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know necessarily if, like, the disaster as it was described to us was exactly what Ryukishi planned along the way. I know that... the thing is,
as always, we don't know. It's fine. He doesn't have to have it exactly planned out like this.
I would argue that it probably is because of the sheer volume of mentions of miasma.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, holy shit, there are so many, especially in Arc 2.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's without purpose. It definitely, like, it's definitely less clear in Arc 2. I do still think it happened. The one I'm actually most dubious about is Arc 4.
Right.
Because going back to the whole thing of, like, maybe Akasaka knew what was going to happen and wrote about it with this, like, guise of being a story written in the future. That, you know, maybe Rika was like, hey, there's gonna be a gas thing somehow. Akasaka, could you stop that?
Right.
And, you know, maybe, Arc 4 it does not quite play out in the same way. I don't know. It's dubious. It's kind of a long draw I'm making there, but it's something I'm definitely considering.
It's definitely something to think about now that we have reached the end of the question arcs, and there is some level of, like, why is it that Rika could, like, say what happens in the future? Is there some continuity between the arcs? Is there something going on there?
I mean, the scene that I will definitely call back to, and I'm drawing a blank now, I'm pretty sure it was Arc 2, was the cats and dogs scene. Like, I know when we first got the mountain dogs, that was, like, what immediately jumped to mind. You know, I think that Rika obviously knows something more about what's going on in the village.
Sure.
Be it that she's speaking to the people that are responsible, but somehow is still being, like, kept under wraps, and maybe that's what the conversations with Akasaka were trying to, like, stop. You know, Akasaka being the person from outside of Hinamizawa would maybe be the one that she could trust and not get in trouble for telling things.
Maybe.
It's a little dodgy.
Sure.
But I do think that moving forwards, Rika is obviously not necessarily an accomplice, but I think given what we've seen so far, she's definitely at least in communication with the culprits.
You think so?
At least if we ascribe the culprits to be the ones responsible for the gas attack, which I think is deliberate, and perhaps who is afflicted by the madness each arc.
Sure.
What's it called again? Was it Hinamizawa syndrome? That's what they called it?
That's the one.
Yeah. I've become so used to calling it the madness that even once we got a name, I was
the
like...
Madness is a good name. So I have a question for you.
Okay.
This is the one question that all the fans want answered, and it's very simple.
Is it which one of Akasaka's family died?
No, because we know that. We know that it was two. It was two.
They didn't tell us his daughter died. They told us his wife died.
We don't know for sure then. One and a half, 2, who knows?
Sorry, his daughter obviously survives.
Yeah, who knows,
Otherwise,
dude?
they would have mentioned it.
No one knows, dude.
I know.
No one knows. All right.
What's the question, Ben?
Does Oshiro-sama exist?
Well, of course Oshiro-sama exists, Ben.
Well, that's wonderful you'd say that. I'm glad we're on the same page. Let's all go have some food,
the
have little
question-
apple rabbits and things. It'll be real
the
nice.
question is, what is Oshiro-sama?
What? What is Oshiro-sama then? Tell me.
Well,
My best friend.
It's obviously a myth, Ben.
Okay.
It's obviously a myth. But
Sure.
we're going back again to the 4 components of myth.
Okay,
right?
go for it.
What was
Literacy.
Oshiro-sama?
What was Oshiro-sama? You tell me. I'm not telling
Because
you.
it obviously started as one tradition and transitioned to another, and
Okay.
where along that line of evolution are we at the moment? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it that the villagers are doing it to fit with the seasons? Are the villagers following it because it's a tradition? Are the villagers following it because it's a warning and it's how they keep themselves safe? And I forget the other one. I'm always forgetting one of them. There's 4 of them. Like,
It's your theory.
it's
not
not
your
my theory.
But you're the one who's studying it.
It's the theory of Ian Plant.
Ian Plant.
Yes.
I remember who that is. It rings a bell, though.
I don't know, but his
Well,
book,
'cause you
his
talked
book's
about
on
him.
my bookshelf, and he's
Sure.
the one that taught it to me.
All right, fair enough. Sounds like a cool guy.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. The further we get in, the more my perspective changes on which it is.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I think obviously way back at the start, it was maybe talking about, like, an allusion to the way people were doing things, the whole, like, idea of cannibalism, you know...
Intestine drifting. How fun.
Like, but then it also could have been, like, a natural myth in terms of, like, maybe there's something in the land that is, like, causing Hinamizawa syndrome, and the people way back in the day used to, like, cut up the people afflicted by it, to try, like, dissuade this syndrome. Which would maybe be what happened with Rika at the end of Arc 3.
Maybe.
And supposedly Arc 4 as well. Right? So there's that connection there to, like, maybe there's a medical reason as to why that's happened. And perhaps that's why Irie is maintaining a position as such a significant character. Is because we're going to get into, like, the medical history of it, which, considering we're dealing with, like, a syndrome and gas as a weapon and people going insane and all of that, like, I feel as though Irie's character is going to fit that role moving forwards.
He's such a lovely doctor. I just love his friendly dulcet tones.
Yeah, but my question is then, what has it evolved to be? Like, is it a historical myth where it's just explaining the way things used to be? Is it just a literary illusion, effectively?
A lot of the, like, tips and things have been saying that Rika might be the reincarnation of Oshiro-sama. Do you think that she is Oshiro-sama?
I mean, going back to what I just said about the medical thing, maybe that's what that's, like, meant to be, is that, like, perhaps Oshiro-sama was the first one afflicted with Hinamizawa syndrome, and that, like, the distorted but heightened awareness that the syndrome gives you was perceived as, like, an oracle-like ability.
Maybe.
And perhaps that's, like, what Rika's role is in that family lineage. That perhaps she's the one that has, like, come back with this heightened form of the syndrome.
Right.
But, like, you know, that's just spitballing ideas.
No, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a
weird one, isn't it?
It really is.
No, that's all right.
Like, the fact that we've spoken about this, I think, in every arc's recap, and I still
Which
don't
we
really
should.
have an answer for you, right?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
That's why I save it till basically the end.
Yeah, like, I don't think I should be able to answer that question right now of, like, what form of myth is Oshiro-sama currently in. But the further we get along, the more I'm extrapolating along those thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, the whole idea of the cannibalism being a, like, metaphor for the syndrome and that role, I don't think is super far-fetched.
I think you could get a pretty good idea. I'm not going to give everyone an idea how close you are, how far away you are, but I have definitely... I will tell you that I have spoken to other people who have absolutely nailed what's going on with Oshiro-sama.
Really?
So it is possible. Whether or not you're close or far, I won't say, but I have spoken with people who have been pretty spot on with their thoughts. And
I think the other contention is just like the magic fantasy thing again. Like, do I take it that Oyashiro Samara is actually some magical being in the story that we're gonna get to know later on? Maybe. I don't think so. But like,
anything's possible.
Anything's possible.
It's Higurashi. That's like the catchphrase of Higurashi. Anything's possible.
Maybe it is.
Even Takano in a nurse outfit.
All right. Well, we've already spoken a bit about Umineko, but I still want to have like our spoiler section.
I would like to. Let's do the Umi spoiler section now. So if you haven't read Umineko, get out of here. But we won't go too spoilery. I think we're mostly going to be comparing the midpoint of both stories.
I think that's right.
So
general
3,
rules,
2, 1. Oh.
General rules for the spoiler section, as always. We're not going to do any like specific story spoilers. But if you want to stay completely clean, get out of here.
Mostly talk about structure. So 3, 2, 1. Umi spoils.
Yay!
Right. So
I did want to say,
it's
something of a meta point. That I feel right now exactly like I did delivering the recap for episode 4 of Umineko.
Interesting.
Like I am suffering the same level of confusion and bewilderment that I was back then.
That's so strange. I feel like the opposite, but yeah, sure.
Like the thing is, going through Umineko, that was like when I was starting to crack down big on theories, whereas right now with Higurashi I've been pretty big on theories a lot of the way through.
For sure, yeah.
And I think that the way that Ryukishi has set up arc or episode 5 both times around has left you with enough questions that I'm having a lot of trouble trying to like nail down, first of all, what those questions are and what is relevant about them, but also how I'm tackling them and my understanding of them. If you go back and you listen to the episode 4 recap of Umineko, I think you'll find I'm probably speaking more in the like thinking about every word I say approach. Whereas if you go and listen to the Higurashi recaps we've done so far, I'm more leading the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
Because I'm just so much more confused in this arc compared to the others, because I don't know what to expect from the answer arcs. Which I think is a good place to be.
Well, yeah, my impression, obviously this is my second time through both stories, but at the end of Umineko arc 4, or episode 4, blown away. First time through and second time through, just like emotionally destroyed. And obviously no explicit spoilers, but there is a very clear like character arc that culminates at the end of episode 4. And to me, that's like indicative of Ryukishi getting a better handle on, this is how you do like a mid-season finale in a show. This is why these sorts of structures exist, because Umineko is much more deliberately structurally laid out. I suppose you could argue that the disaster at the end of Higurashi is supposed to kind of fit that moment better.
I don't know. I feel as though, having said earlier this recap that Arc 4 could not be a story on its own, I feel as though Arcs 1 to 4 could be a story on their own in a way that Umineko 1 to 4 couldn't.
Yeah, sure.
Because of the way that it ends on such a cliffhanger.
Yep. I feel like I didn't feel emotionally distraught at the end of this episode. I didn't have to take a minute to go like have a cold shower and think about my life at the end of Himatsubushi. It just was like, yeah, that was a cool ending. I'm ready for the next one when it comes out. I don't feel like it really hits you in the same way emotionally that Umineko's halfway point does.
I mean, there are a lot of times that cliffhangers like that will just leave me feeling frustrated, and I will just stop following a product. I think Umineko's was a good example of one that actually made me like engaged more with the story, and I was anticipating
it. Really good,
especially because the day we finished it was the day that the episode 5 release came out.
Yep, which was really good timing.
Definitely helped.
Oh God, what was I gonna say? Yeah, the end of episode 4 obviously is a huge moment for the story. It completely recontextualizes everything you've read so far, depending, of course, on how on top of things you are when you're reading it. But I don't think that Himatsubushi has that same impact. I just don't think it is. I think that it is, it's the fat that's been trimmed that Ryukishi was like, I'll make a story out of it and it'll be fun. It'll be a good time. But episode 4, despite the fact that we've said, it's meandering, it has some pacing problems, it really badly needs an editor, more than all of other parts of Ryukishi's work, episode 4 needs it the most. its finale it has some of the most perfect moments in storytelling. I'm thinking particularly of the rooftop, the balcony scene, and of course the entire scene in the rose garden, I suppose.
Yeah.
Like every single line in that is like a gut punch, or it's trying to tell you something. Himatsubushi is like, Oishi and Akasaka get drunk and talk about how they're gonna put everything right. It's gonna be great, and like it's cool. Like, it's a good scene, and I love Oishi so much for it. But like, it's not on that same level at all to me.
I'm not feeling hungry to read Miyakashi right now.
Yes.
Which is what we're going to do straight after we finish recording this recap. Like, I'm not sitting here going, oh, yes, we're about to start Miyakashi. I'm like, all right, cool. What do I need to say when we start Miyakashi? Which is a very different emotion to what I was feeling going into episode 5 of Umineko.
Yeah, I was really incredibly hyped for episode 5 of Umineko to start that, because there's some crazy shit going on. But this one, I'm like, oh yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
You know? Which is like, again, I need to keep reminding everyone of this. I still feel like Higurashi has had a much more profound effect on my life as a general kind of rule. I might talk about a bit more about that later, but you know, go look at the is it the recap 2 of Arc 1? I talked about the play a little bit more, that sort of thing. Go look at the other recaps. I still feel like Higurashi has like a closer place to my heart, but Umineko does have a more broad strength, if that makes any sense.
Definitely.
It's more well-rounded, and it's also much more deliberate, which really works in its favor. But I love both. They're both my special little baby childs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel as though I've really just shat on Himatsubushi through this recap.
Yeah. Same.
Ultimately, I do think it was a bit of a letdown as a chapter.
Yeah.
Of an arc, rather. But it has not dissuaded me from how much I'm enjoying Higurashi.
Yeah, for sure.
If anything, one of the things that we've kind of gone on a fair bit about through both playthroughs is the idea that Higurashi was aimed at a younger target audience.
Yep.
I think that whilst in editing Tatari Goroshi, I'd maybe have said that Tatari Goroshi was the one to introduce the more heavy themes.
Sure.
I feel like Arc 4 was the one where they actually came across to me a bit stronger.
Sure.
I feel as though Himatsubushi very much sets up that, like, this is a mature story. Right?
Yeah.
Because it's the first time that we've viewed the world from the perspective of an
adults.
adult.
Yep, absolutely.
And, like, you know, Akasaka's obviously still young, so that you don't get a complete tonal whiplash of, like, an old character. But I think it's a nice transition to, like, hey, we've had these super fucking heavy themes in Tatari Goroshi. The adults are still part of the story.
What are they doing?
Yeah, and...
Well, it gives you that perspective, because, of course, Higurashi falls under, and I don't know how, like, strong this genre, I suppose, is in Japan, but it's the, like, teenage mystery, like, movie, like I'm thinking, like, E.T., Scooby-Doo maybe. Let's say Scooby-Doo.
Yeah,
but
obviously.
like all those like stories, the Goonies is like a good example.
Yep.
All those ones where you have the like
Stand By
ensemble.
Me.
Yeah, like there's this ensemble cast of kids and they're uncovering like the secret truths about the world. And there are all sorts of like tropes, like how the monster, like it will never like hardly ever like hurt the kids, but they'll learn like about how the world really is. It's a story of growing up. And one thing that the kids always have in common, that all these stories like, well, not all of them, but it's a big trope, is that when you go to the adults for help, when these kids go to the adults either they don't believe them, or they don't understand, or they don't have time, or whatever. And the whole point, it's about growing up, but it's also about kids like understanding their importance, understanding that they can deal with the monster. I'm thinking of It as well, like young kids facing up against big boy problems. And that's very much an element. There isn't like a big scary monster, but there's the murders, there's the reality of what's happening in the town and all that crap. And that's Arcs 1 to 3. Arc 4 doesn't have that because we are with the adults.
Yes.
It's very much, it's that different perspective, which is awesome. It's really cool seeing Ryukishi take on new challenges, you know? Completely shifting genres in a sense.
Yeah, I think we might wrap it up there. There's definitely more that I have to say, but I think that kind of stuff will fit the post-edit a bit better because it's definitely stuff I want to look over again. But ultimately, as weak as Himatsubushi was in a lot of ways, I still very much appreciate its presence and role in the story.
For sure.
I'm glad that we got this break before Miyakashi.
However, it is the time-wasting chapter, and thus we will move on swiftly to the next course of the meal.
Yeah. So post-edit will be up in a few minutes after this video.
Look forward to it.
Thank you very much for joining us.
See you in the next video.
Hell yeah.